It's Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, so you know what that means. It's time for another episode of Event Icons, presented by Endless Events, the show where you get to ask the icons of the events industry anything. So, you might be wondering, how do you get to ask questions? All you have to do is use the question panel on the right of GoToWebinar to submit your questions. Or you can hop on Twitter to submit your questions with the hashtag #EventIcons. We'll be answering your questions live during the entire show. Before we get started, the more people we have watching, the better conversation we can have. So please help share #EventIcons on Twitter and Facebook. Just tell your friends to watch at www.event-icons.com. Now, without any further delay, this is #EventIcons with your hosts, Will Curran of Endless Events, Laura Lopez of Social Tables, and Brant Kruger of Event Technology Consulting.
All right, everybody. Good afternoon, evening, or morning, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to Event Icons. We really appreciate you joining us today. Will and Laura are not with us today. They're busy changing a gasket on the International Space Station or something along those lines, but that means I get to have our guest all to myself today because we're going to be talking some intense event tech today. I am being joined by Ashley Crowder, who is the co-founder and CEO of Ventana. Welcome, Ashley.
Thanks for having me.
All right, well, let's get into it right away. We'll give you a chance to talk a little bit more about what Ventana does. But before we do, we always ask a couple of standard questions as we roll into these things. So first, what got you into the events industry?
It was an internship, of all things. I was an engineering student. I always loved engineering, and I went out on a limb and took an internship at MTV. Totally not, what I thought I would be doing, and I just loved it. I got to go to BET and help plan press junkets, and just really fell in love with the events and the whole experience people had.
Very good, very good. Now, if you hadn't taken that internship, your life probably would have taken a very different turn. So if you weren't in the events industry, what would you have been doing?
Well, I was an engineer at a BP refinery for a while, so I might still be there. But I've always had an interest in mixed reality and AR and VR, and I think I would definitely be doing something still along those lines.
Well, that's going to get us right into the topic for today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what Ventana does?
Yeah, so Ventana helps quantify consumer engagement through interactive holograms. Our patented platform allows you to easily create interactive holograms that track data on consumers. A great example, because I know it's such a new thing, is at the Super Bowl this year, fans could see their hologram live next to SpongeBob SquarePants, throw him a football, do a touchdown dance, super fun, and then they got a video to share online. Our system tracks everything. So we could tell Nickelodeon at the end, they had thousands of fans go through, X number of people shared on Facebook, Twitter, how many times people watch those videos, and then because we're getting your image, we also have facial recognition, and we can tell your age, your gender, and even your sentiment. So we can really provide a lot of valuable data to those brands at the end of the day.
See, and I think you buried the lead there a little bit, and so I think it's worth kind of going back and really clarifying exactly what you mean when you say we're talking about interactive holograms here. So let's can you give us an example of of how and I know you kind of do things all different kinds of scales, but can you give us just one kind of simple example for people to kind of start to wrap their head around what we're talking about when we say interactive holograms?
Yeah. So Princess Leia from Star Wars, have that image in your mind. We can project you multiple places at once. So we've done keynote presentations for Intel, for example. Their executive was projected live on stage in Taiwan while he was somewhere else to announce their new processor chip, and then disappeared, which was a huge wow moment. Got a lot of earned PR and media, which was a great success for Intel. And then it's the individual interactions. So, another example, because I think examples are always helpful, at the US Open in 2015, you could actually serve a tennis ball to Roger Federer's hologram. So you got to walk up, you could go like this, a virtual ball appeared, and his hologram would hit it. So those are the types of experiences we're creating. And it's been so much fun because it's creating these VIP experiences people wouldn't be able to have otherwise. You know, even if you bought feet on the court seats at the U.S. Open, you couldn't throw a ball at Roger Federer. You'd probably be kicked out. So holograms kind of provide this new way to leverage endorsement deals and then even show off products. You know, on the other end of the spectrum, we work with a farm equipment company, and their machine milks cows, but they can't bring a cow to most conference centers, and so we do a hologram that shows how their machinery works, and it's been hugely successful for them.
That's an interesting use case. I mean, yeah, like you say, you're not going to be able to. I think cows are generally frowned upon on the trade show floor, but you know. So I mean, before the show started, we got to talking a little bit about this being an augmented reality technology, and it certainly isn't what I consider when I think of like typical when we're talking AR and VR these days. It's not the kind of thing that immediately pops into my head. Can you explain why you think hologram technology fits under the definition of augmented reality, what your definition of augmented reality is, and why would a planner want to start exploring these types of technologies?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, it's been so exciting to be a part of this industry, kind of, you know, for the past 5 years, because we're really developing the terminology and deciding what everything is called. So, augmented reality is generally putting the digital into the real world. And you're right, most people think of headsets like HoloLens or Magic Leap, or of course Pokemon Go, which is using your cell phone. But it's all about putting. There we go. You got your cardboard. But the clear basic definition is putting the digital into the real world and letting you have access to that. So ours is doing that, but with standalone hardware. So you don't have to wear anything. Everybody in the room can see and interact with that hologram at the same time, which we think is the most valuable part for events when you're trying to create these authentic group experiences. VR, or virtual reality, is when you're totally immersed in the digital space. So you have a headset on, and I could feel like I was sitting on a beach right now instead of at my desk. But the future of all of this is really just going to be a spectrum of how much digital and how much of the real world we choose to see, and if that is an individual experience or if that's a shared group experience.
And I think you're absolutely right on that. I mean, it's really anytime you were talking about augmented reality, it's anytime we're layering something over reality, right? And so it was, in a way, it was kind of my own limited thinking as far as not counting holograms as far as that goes. So I'd like to kind of go back to kind of the tail end of that and just hit, so why now do we want to start looking at these technologies in our events? Is it just a splashy factor, or can we actually start to get a little bit more out of it?
Yeah, and I think the answer is twofold. I mean, one, people, you know, they're still talking about millennials, right? How do we reach these millennials? They have no attention span. You know, they define luxury differently. They don't define luxury as a product. It's an experience. You know, older generations, to brag about wealth, they'd buy a fancy car, park it in their driveway, your neighbor would see it. Now it's traveling the world and posting that on Instagram, right? So how do you capture their attention? And they value these experiences. And so it's all about how do you create a lasting experience with these customers with new technology. Gen Z is now even surpassing the buying power of millennials, and they're digital natives. So they demand tech. I mean, they're born knowing how to use an iPad, which I'm sure you've seen. So they demand new technology to be communicated with, and holograms are a great way to do that because it is the wow factor that gets them engaged. And at least with our system, we're also providing them a take-home, so they get a video they can share on social media, which is so important because it's not on social media, it didn't happen. And then we know where they shared it. It can live on long past that event and really drive more traffic to your website, traffic to your blog, because, you know, as you all know, events are just that one day, but it's everything leading up to and what lasts long past that event that is so important.
When you say they can take it home, and what can you give an example of that? Of, you know, what exactly are they getting to take home with them or post on social media? Is it just an image, or yeah?
Yeah, we do a video or a GIF or GIF, however you want to say it. So no
No one
matter,
really knows.
I know. So no matter what that experience is, whether it's throwing the football to SpongeBob SquarePants, you got a video of you interacting with that hologram. It was superimposed on a football field. It just automatically got sent to you in a branded email, so that brands can decide what's that call to action in that email. Do you want to get 10% off from buying something on their website? Do you want them to share? Maybe there's a contest to see who gets the most likes. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. And then everything's managed by our backend. So we have a cloud platform that manages everything. I could log in right now and see all the different holograms we have going on right now. And then some we even sync directly with our client CRM system. So for Lexus, their goal was to drive leads to their dealers. So we created a really fun basketball hologram experience at the Clippers games, and we more than doubled their leads, which was awesome. And so they've expanded us now. We've been in 7 stadiums with them.
That's always nice when you get those really big numbers that you can say, kind of before and after, and that's, I mean, like you say, it drives you home. You do it once, they see it, they see the value in it, and away they go. You started to bring up kind of being able to see some of the different projects that you're working on. Are you able to share some of the cool things that you've used, some of the cool use cases that you've used lately, or just, even some of your best work as you've gone? I know it's hard to choose, but, are there any ones that you're able to share?
Yeah, I mean, the Lexus one is great. That started with the interactive basketball game. Now we have a hologram of a Lexus car that you can rotate around. You can choose your color, all with gestures. Really fun. But then I know what car you want, which is very interesting to them. And then, another one that was really fun for Rob Thomas, if there's any Matchbox 20 fans out there. He has a solo career now, and we did the first ever hologram karaoke. So fans got to sing with his hologram, and they got a video that looked like they performed on stage together. So again, one of those experiences fans would just never get to have. So it was a huge success. The videos got over 65,000 views. Ended up getting 65 media placements because it was something so new and innovative. And we did a whole contest who could get the most likes and shares because he really wanted to drive, that social traffic. So that was another big win there. And so, part of it is the content can be anything. It just comes down to what's the goal of that brand and how do we get there.
Well, I love that you're focusing on the experience and the interactivity of it. It's not just a passive, let's throw a hologram up on stage and we can all sit and watch it. And isn't that funny that just happened there? That you're really getting people involved and interacting with these technologies as opposed to that kind of passive thing. I mean, is that kind of the main need as far as providing experience, or are there other needs kind of planners starting to see with this technology? That was kind of a mishmash of a question, but I mean, if you get what I'm asking here. So obviously the experience, that's a huge part of it, but what are some of the other needs maybe that planners might be able to use this technology for?
Yeah, so of course, the experience is like when people freak out, right? Because they're like, oh my God, it says hello back to me, or whatever that interaction we plan. But then people are also, it's just a very cool thing to see. We can do hologram logos that are floating there. So think from a sponsorship sale perspective, this can be a new sponsorship upsell to your event. And it can be one display, and we can have multiple hologram logos on there. And everybody runs up and wants to see it, and they all try and touch it. I will say that the Nickelodeon event, they were sliming kids next to the hologram, and then slime, they'd run up and try and touch it and hug SpongeBob, which was hilarious. We had slime everywhere for a while, but it just kind of goes to show that people are drawn to it because it is so different and new. And hologram logos are relatively easy for us to throw on there. So you could have that one display and sell multiple sponsorships.
I think that's an important point. I mean, and you've touched on it a couple of times now that we're dealing with all different kinds of scale here. That, you know, we're not just talking about person-sized things or, you know, these big giant things. And that's something that I talk about a lot when I'm talking about projection mapping. That you don't have to be these big giant buildings. You know, let's talk about some of the smaller stuff that you can do in receptions. And so that's you know, one of the interesting things about what you guys do is that you do these kind of small-scale interactive things as well. You can do the big stuff, but you can do the small stuff, the up-close magic, as it were, in order to do it.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I think people sometimes get scared or overwhelmed when they think hologram, oh, it must be this massive thing. But we really have solutions from our kind of kiosk Z display all the way up to our hologram concerts, you know. So it really is a huge array of what you can do. And yeah, not to be kind of afraid. It's like, oh, well, there's all different types of solutions that we can have. We joke, you know, we invented all this tech and we're really just doing selfies, but that's what people want, you know. So, you know, we have our hologram selfies. It's almost just like a futuristic photo booth. You know, you get to see your mini hologram, you interact, you get a photo, and that's one of kind of our smaller solutions.
Exactly. Are there what's been kind of the craziest use case that you can think of? Something that's really out there that maybe you didn't think was going to work, but then once it all pulled together, you know, you realize, oh wow, that actually did make sense. Anything along those lines?
Well, I already gave the cow example. Which
Well, that's true. Fair. To be fair, I did forget about the cow for a moment. That's up there. Okay. Anything else?
Is one that's definitely up there. I'd say, you know, of course, sports has just become huge for us. You know, it wasn't something that I initially thought about when starting the company. And, you know, we actually did 3 different holograms at the Super Bowl. We've been in 7 sports stadiums with Lexus. We did Cubs opening day, which was really fun. Fans got to pitch a ball to Addison Russell's hologram, and he hit it into an Aquafina bottle. Super fun. So it's been really, really interesting to see just the success in those sporting events. And I think it's because, you know, no one's going to wear a headset to a football game. I just don't think that's going to happen. If you know, maybe it will, but 20 years from now. And people just want that group experience. You know, they're with their buddies, or they're on a date, and you want to catch them as they're walking by. So that's been a great use case. And then, you know, with the trade shows, I mean, whether it's the cow or it's just showing off another product, it really helps to be able to see a 3D version. Even think like medical devices we're starting to do. You know, hologram hip replacement. We're showing how the stent worked and everything. So it really comes down to content, because it can be anything.
Are there any times that it just hasn't worked, either for you or something that you've seen? You know, obviously we don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but, you know, is there just anything where you're just like, oh, that was a massive fail? Anything along those lines?
I wouldn't say, you know, massive fail. I'd say, you know, as a company, we generally like to stick with the living. You know, obviously everyone knows Tupac. It's the first thing that comes up, and I think a lot of people's minds immediately go to, let's bring someone back. You know, we think it's so much more exciting to show off products and create, you know, live experiences. Maybe you personally can be 10 places at once. So, you know, in general, sometimes the dead people can be creepy. So I'd say, you know, and we just like to stick with the living. But yeah, I wouldn't say there's any massive fails. I think it's a matter of, you know, business model, and we really see the value in trying to solve for lead generation and consumer attention.
So one of the things that we like to hammer home anytime we're talking about technology is, you know, really what planners need to start taking into account kind of before they even start to approach companies. You know, what do they need to be thinking of when they talk to it, as far as choosing vendors, along those kinds of lines. You know, this still being a relatively new technology, are there any kind of precautions, red flags they should watch out for before they start unleashing holograms onto their events?
I would say one thing to keep in mind is, you know, you do need hardware to project the hologram. So one thing to note is, you know, what space do you have available? And we can do, you know, all different sizes, but, you know, going back to the Princess Leia example, it's not quite there yet. It's not, you know, a magic projection. You do need some hardware to project that. But then we can work with a lot of existing assets. So don't be worried that, you know, you're going to have to spend all this money on content, creating it from scratch. You know, any 3D file we can work with, which is great, whether that's a CAD file of a product, an FBX file, you know, a vector logo file, all of that stuff is great. Or, you know, Nickelodeon's case, they gave us the SpongeBob character, all that stuff can be leveraged. You don't have to build it from scratch. And even with VR, it's interesting. Intel hired us to do a hologram at South by Southwest when they launched a new VR piece, which most people don't think about, but they knew they were going to have this long line of people, and what were they going to do while they're waiting for a headset? So we took some of their assets. It was a Hubble telescope. We took that asset from the VR experience and we made it into a hologram. So you know, you don't have to create hologram content, create VR content. There's a lot of crossover with that, which is great from a, you know, investment standpoint.
I think I know the answer to this, but I want to make sure. Are you able to do a live interaction with a person? So you've got someone in one location broadcasting live to a hologram in another location?
Yeah, we'll have to do that next time.
Okay.
So yeah, we did that for Intel in Taiwan, for them to announce that processor chip. We've done LA to Seoul, South Korea with less than a second delay. So everybody at the W Hotel in Seoul could ask the hologram questions. They would respond in real time. So that's a great use case of this technology, whether it's an executive who just can't be there, or we've done things with Microsoft where that executive was there, but as she mentioned the Surface Pro, a hologram appeared next to her of that product. So, you know, way more impactful than a PowerPoint, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, we get requests to do live telepresence of people who maybe can't be here legally. You know, so we've gotten requests for Snowden. I don't know him personally, so that's always my response. If you have an introduction, I'm happy to make the tech happen. But that's where things can get very, very interesting with this technology and creating like experiences at your event that just wouldn't be possible before.
And just for my own curiosity, is that a multi-camera thing or just a single camera? How does that filmed on the sending side?
Yeah, it's actually a single camera. It's a specific setup, so we do need some control over that environment.
Sure.
People think concerts, it's like, you know, Lady Gaga's concert, way too many things happening. We do need some control over that. But speakers, it's easy to do. And we set up dedicated internet lines, you know, or a broadcasting truck, but we can handle all of that.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, I mean, one of the French politicians in the most recent election was using holographic technology to be able to do stump speeches in various locations all at the same time. So it's definitely picking up. Which kind of leads me to my next question. I mean, as this starts to become more mainstream, using these types of technology, I mean, right now it's still kind of new and shiny, but someone was asking in the audience, you know, are they going to be as effective, you know, once they kind of become mainstream? Are they going to lose their wow factor as we start to see them more and more, or is it still going to be cool for a while?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always going to be some element of wow factor, and because sometimes people don't even realize it is a hologram. And I always give this example, you know, we did a hologram concert in Chicago a few years ago for Nokia and Microsoft, and it was marketed as a hologram concert. Everybody knew that's what they were coming for. And the first 20 minutes, people kept asking when the hologram was going to start because they thought they were real, which is pretty great. And then the beat dropped, and we lit the DJ booth on fire, and people freaked out, which was really cool. So I think it all comes down to content. You know, no matter what medium you're talking about, content is king. And if you're focused on that, and it literally can be anything, which almost makes it more difficult. That's where the wow factor comes in. And I think it's that interactivity too. Like I said, you know, if someone says hello and that hologram says hi back, that's that wow moment for them.
Sure.
And it's so personal.
You know, and you went back into the a while ago we were talking about the shareability side, and that connects someone asked in the audience, how important is that shareability side when you're planning to use holograms as far as activations, and that kind of melds into your Intel example. So I mean, when they're sitting back and planning this thing, is that still an important part of the conversation, or at least as much as it has been for the last year or so?
Yeah, I think it's a very important part, but I think it comes down, for the Intel example, their goal was to, wow the audience and get PR. So there wasn't a social, there wasn't an automatic social sharing aspect to that. It was more the audience was amazed, and this executive was somewhere else, and they got a bunch of press. That's what I think that telepresence is great for. And then, if it's a brand who wants to engage consumers, so it's that B2B2C kind of aspect, that's when that social sharing, I think, is so important. And even if we don't have, say it's simply, a hologram product that they want to show, they want to show off their product, show how it works. It doesn't really make sense to get a selfie with an electronic toothbrush. I don't know what the product is, but it's showing how that works. Our sensors can still scan however many people walked by, how many people were engaging, and we can still give you all that demographic information just by who stopped and looked at it. So there's all different levels of engagement and data.
And don't discount the electric toothbrush, because my wife is a dental hygienist, and she probably would take a selfie with the right electronic toothbrush. So let's get a little, I understand that every event is different, and everything, there's going to be differences in content creation and all that kind of stuff, but a little bit ballparky about cost. That's been something that's been kind of popping up in the feed a little bit here. Is what does it cost? What does it cost? What does it cost? So I know, again, we all understand, we're all event people, that it's going to really depend on the installation. But can you talk generally about the costs involved?
Yeah, so cost really depends on the size of the hologram. So I mentioned kind of like our kiosk Z displays all the way up to our large stage size displays. And then the content. And so those are kind of the two main factors. Content's a one-time fee. So you create that, you can use it as many times as you want, at many events as you want. So there's definitely economies of scale for doing multiple events. We lease the systems as well as sell them, so those are different options. One client, they do 40 trade shows a year, they purchase the Z, create a piece of content, they leverage that across the whole year, which is great. Other people, they don't, it doesn't make sense for them to make a CapEx spend. They want us to handle everything, so we'll do, a long-term lease type deal, or it's those one-off events. So those are kind of, it is such a range because of all those different factors. But if you definitely send an email to info@Ventana, we'll definitely happy to give you a quote based on your event.
And I know it's always tricky, but it's always good to ask. But I totally understand not wanting to get pinned down too much into the details on that. I know I would probably say the same thing on a lot of events.
It's almost like asking how much is a website, right? What's your website?
Yeah, exactly. So, but I saw it. Like I said, I saw it pop up a couple of times, so I thought it was worth asking. So looking forward. Where do you think this technology can go? I mean, you're obviously going to keep advancing, making it cooler and more realistic. Where do you see this going in the next 4 to 5 years?
Yeah, so we see it continuing to get more and more interactive and seamless. So we've built out this cloud platform to create interactive content while collecting data. Eventually, we're going to be opening that up to allow anyone to create their own interactive hologram content, which could be display agnostic. Ventana's software could power content on HoloLens. Those are things we're starting to look at. And our hardware in general will continue to shrink. Shrink in size, making it easier to set up, more cost effective, and just become that much more magical, because it's like, whoa, this hologram is appearing, where is it coming from?
And just a reminder to anybody that might be joining us live, you can ask questions in the GoToWebinar questions tab. You just go down there, click on that, and you can type questions in there. So if anything comes up and you want to ask them there. Or if you're following along on Twitter using #EventIcons, don't forget you can reach out to us there and ask us questions as well. What's something that the technology currently isn't letting you do that you would like it to do. So something that you'd like to be able to do, a couple years down the road here, but you can't quite get it there yet. Is there anything that's holding you back right now?
Well, I'd say the two things that we're looking at integrating are, one is haptics. So, you can get haptic feedback, whether, that's throwing the ball to SpongeBob SquarePants, but you feel like you're really holding that virtual ball could be amazing. And the other is AI that we're starting to look at. So, we've done things where you can play tennis with Roger Federer. We've done things where you can ask specific questions, the hologram will answer. But as we start to integrate AI, you could ask anything. So that leads you to having a hologram concierge at a stadium or a hotel that can direct you to your seat or answer any questions, and that starts to get very, very interesting. So those are two areas we're starting to look at. Google just announced their AI chip, which is pretty exciting. So I know our team of engineers is always excited to play with new technology like that.
So the haptic thing is interesting. It actually kind of goes back to the beginning of our discussion about augmented reality being any time you layer something over reality. And sometimes we get caught up in it just being visual, but anytime you're layering over reality, that could also be touch. And there are some pretty interesting technologies that are out there. I encourage anybody that's listening to go do a Google search for a company called Ultra Haptics. And they're one of the companies that's working on using this touchless feeling, is what they literally call it, where they're using, I believe, ultrasonics to make it feel like you're touching a button or turning a knob. And this is not like some crazy pie-in-the-sky technology. I mean, the prototypes and everything that I've seen look like they work, and the people that have used them say it's crazy. It feels like you're touching something when in fact there's nothing there. I mean, it's the closest we've got to the holodeck type thing yet. So yeah, that's got to be really encouraging to you guys to see those technologies coming down the pipe and think about how can we use these things together. Yeah, that you're not just looking like you're picking up a ball, but actually feels like you're picking up a ball. I had a question come in here. Let's see if I can bring it up. Just want to make sure. Let me skim it here before I. It literally just came in from Meredith. From Meredith, who's watching live. So, planning a meeting for a large corporation in September. Theme of the meeting is journey into the next 50 years. Trying to get them to do something interesting and fun during free time. How could we engage our attendees with augmented reality related to this theme? Any ideas off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, especially if that's for the event during their free time. I mean, you could create a really fun hologram selfie experience. So in that product I mentioned, where they can see their hologram live, they can interact with other holograms, whether that's a logo of the brand, or we can have a hologram spaceship fly by them. It could all be futuristic themed, and just getting them excited and thinking about different technology. And again, have that take home to share with people so it continues long after the event. Or it could be taking over that presentation. So, as one of the keynotes is on stage, we could have holograms appearing next to him or her with the latest and greatest in technology. I think it's all about, inspiring people, especially at conferences. It's all, companies spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to just inspire their employees and get them thinking outside the box. And I think holograms are a great way to do that, because most people haven't had the chance to personally interact with them, which can be very cool. So please email us. So.
We're making connections here. We're making connections.
Yeah, happy to brainstorm.
So, I mean, it sounds like you guys are growing with, by leaps and bounds. Has there been any challenges just as far as you guys as a company, or you personally, as far as with that growth, keeping up? And, when you've got a hot product, sometimes that's a little difficult. Any challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I don't sleep, but what founders do, I guess. No, I mean, it's been really exciting. We're growing the team. We are looking for more developers. If there's any Unity developers out there interested in AR and holograms, please email us. We just make things happen. Sometimes we joke in our auto response at info@Ventana, it'll say, if it's a hologram emergency, call this number. You'd be surprised at how many hologram emergencies we get. the Taiwan event we did in Intel, we were hired 10 days before that.
Wow.
Which was pretty crazy, but we made it happen, and that's just kind of the company we are. We know, events, they start at 8 p.m. on Friday. Everything needs to be ready to go by then, and we can make it happen. So we prefer more lead time than that, but events are events. And I joked to the team, I was like, we can't move the Super Bowl, so everything has to be done by that date.
Is that the shortest lead time you've had?
The shortest with it was a life-size hologram telepresence in Taiwan, I'd say, with 10 days. So that was probably the craziest.
How big is your team?
So we've got 10 full-time, mostly engineers in-house, and then we've got about 50 contractors trained on how to set up our equipment, and they're distributed across the U.S. So, wherever your event is, we can have people there know how to set it up and run that, which is great.
Very good, very good. All right, well, we're starting to wind down, and we think we've handled most of the questions that have come in from the audience so far. So we'll start to wind down a bit. We've got kind of these stock questions that we like to ask everybody that comes in. We had the 2 at the beginning, then we've got a couple at the end. And whether it's related to holograms and augmented reality or not, if you could pick only one, what would be the one tip that you have for planners? And it can be holograms and AR, or it can be just something general.
Yeah, I would say just, capitalize on new technology in general. People are often afraid to be the first, but the first has so much PR opportunity and earned media opportunity. I mean, even when Facebook Live first came out, if you did a Facebook Live, it sent a notification to everyone who followed you, which was huge, because if you were a company posting, only about 10%, I think, of people who followed you would even see that post. But if you did a Facebook Live, everyone would get that notification. So I'd really say don't be afraid to experiment and take advantage of new tech and new offerings, because first movers will generally get the biggest benefit there.
And that can be something that's difficult sometimes for planners to deal with, is that taking that step. We know the word planner is literally in the name, and so it doesn't go well with winging it too much, and we like to make sure things are nice and organized and going to come off as a way that we want them to be. All right, and do you have any new cool resources? We always like to emphasize it doesn't have to be event related. It could be just a life hack that was something that's working for you these days. Websites, blogs, books, gadgets. What kind of resources would you like to share?
Yeah, one we just discovered and started using is Yoast. It's a plugin for WordPress, and it helps with your SEO. And it's
How do you spell that?
Yoast.
Okay.
So if you're writing a blog, and I'm sure almost every event company has a blog. If not, you should have a blog to help generate that SEO. But if you write out an article, it will highlight and categorize things red, yellow, or green. And it's green when it's good to go, and it's good for SEO. And so it's just extremely helpful, because SEO is so important to help people find you. So that's a new plugin I just learned about that has been amazing.
Yeah, those types of AI plugins I think are going to be more and more popular, where it's actually analyzing your writing and looking for certain things. I've been experimenting with one. I'll use this as kind of my resource of the week. Grammarly, which is a service that actually checks your writing, looks for not only punctuation and spelling, but just kind of weak words, wiggle words that are like, maybe you could use something a little stronger than this. And they have both free and paid plans. And I've been experimenting with it as a Chrome plugin, where you can actually have it. So anytime you're typing in anything on the web, it'll actually pop up a little thing and not only do spell correcting, but make these subtle suggestions of, okay, maybe you don't want to have that many commas in your sentence, or those kinds of things. So, yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. So Yoast is a WordPress plugin that you guys have been using, and then Grammarly is the one that I'm suggesting. Anything else? Any kind of life hacks? Anything that's really changed? You say you're not sleeping much. Is there anything that you're using to help get past that?
Yeah, well, it's just a matter of being busy. But yeah, I'd say the other thing, I'm one of those people, I've got a million things going on, I'm running around. I misplace my keys every single day. So Tile has saved me probably hours looking for my keys. If any of you out there are like that, that's just a very personal life hack for me. But yeah, in general, I'd say, you know, keep your mornings to yourself too. I really try and not schedule meetings in the morning to get through my to-do list of what's most important. I believe it's the book, you know, the 5-hour work week, whatever. You know, if you win the mornings, you win the day, and I think it's so true. So, you know, don't let people take away that time from you to dedicate to getting your to-do list done. I think it's so important.
We did have a couple last-minute questions come in, so we have a few minutes. If you have a few minutes to spare, we'd like to get into them. Great. Someone wanted to know, how did you get started into holograms? So I know you kind of told the story of getting involved with MTV. What brought along the shift?
Yeah, so no one was making money selling records at the time. They were only making money doing shows. I had a lot of friends who are DJs, and I said, hey, what if you could play 10 shows at once? And you can make more money. And they said that would be great, and met with Paradigm Talent Agency, and they make a percentage every time their artist plays, and they said, oh, you're printing money. That's literally what they said. That sounds great. And so that was the impetus to founding Ventana with my co-founder Ben, around letting artists play multiple venues at the same time. And we built hardware because there was nothing on the market that was scalable or affordable. So we had to build it, and we pulled off our first event. It was with Nikki Romero and Kia Cars in LA with Paradigm Talent Agency. Paul Oakenfold was there. He, if you're a DJ fan, he's one of the fathers of DJ from the UK. And he actually emailed us the next day, and we didn't believe it was him. We're like, this isn't Paul. And then he called us, and we were like, oh my God, it's really Paul. And he was like, yeah, I'm getting older. I don't want to travel as much. I love this. I want to help. So we started in music, and Paul let us record a 2-hour set of him as a hologram. He said, use this, try and sell it. Let's see if this can work. And that's really where we started, and every hologram concert we did was sponsored by a brand. And we said, okay, brands seem to like this. What else do you want to do with this technology? And they kept saying interactive, and engage consumers. And then, of course, they're spending all this money at these events. How do we know it was successful? And so that's when we laid on that data piece, and led us to where we are today, which is, wow consumers with holograms, engage them, give something to live on past that event that's on social, and then tell me how successful that was. So it was a long journey.
So you've worked with some heavy hitters there. I mean, what's your dream client? If you could just pick and say, man, I wish I could work with them. Sephora would be one of my dream clients. We've worked with Hourglass Cosmetics, and we just did NYX Cosmetics at BeautyCon last weekend in New York, which was really fun. I think Sephora has so many amazing brands underneath them, and some great endorsement deals too that could be leveraged. So I think we could do a lot of really cool things there. And you touched on it a couple of times now, and again, if we have a couple minutes to spare, the analytics side, we didn't really dive into that much. I mean, what kind of analytics are you able to offer your clients? What kind of, once you've done the engagement and you're back and looking at the data afterwards, what kind of insights can they get out of that?
Yeah, so we can tell you how many people engaged, who shared, where did they share, Facebook, Twitter, did they download, how many people watched that video or GIF, how long on average were they watching it, and then we can tell you the demographics of everyone who came and engaged with that display. So we can tell you age, gender, and even sentiment. And sentiment's important because I know you're happier looking at a blue car than a red car, for instance, or you're happier looking at that red lipstick than that pink lipstick. So we can really start to give product preferences and even design that experience to get even more information. So for auto, we can do a hologram car configurator. So you can pick your color, your rims, your interior, you can see your hologram car, you can see yourself in the car, maybe with LeBron, if that's the endorsement deal, who knows. But then I know what car you want, and we can feed that back to the CRM system, and so that local dealer can reach out to you when that car's in their lot. And so that's where the data gets really, really exciting.
I think there's an interesting point there in that in order to gain interactivity, there needs to be a camera or something focused back at the person who's going to be doing the interaction. And so that's, I would imagine, where you're getting a lot of that data from.
Yeah, that's built into all of our systems, yeah.
And again, going back to AI and analyzing things, that's only going to get more powerful. Like you said, talking about people's sentiment, how they feel, those kind of blanking on the term, the micro expressions, things like that can be picked up to determine whether or not somebody likes something or dislikes something.
Yeah, I mean, it gets so interesting. I mean, and the first time we did one of these types of experiences that was at Interactive, and the data collection was actually a pre-party for the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And we were kind of worried because it was a lot of celebrities and politicians who are generally very guarded about their information. The minute they got to be a hologram, nobody cared. We had a line the whole night, and over 600 people did it, including like the mayor of DC, which was really, really interesting, because it goes back to if you create an authentic, meaningful experience for people, one, they don't even realize they're being advertised to, because it's fun and exciting, and then they want to learn about your brand. And two, they're willing to give up certain information to do that. And so it's not the pop-up ad. I always go back to that, in the future of the VR and AR world, you can't have pop-up ads. That would be abrasive. You're like walking down the street and it like flies at you. Like, that's terrible. So I'm really excited about this future and creating these authentic brand experiences that are fun for people and aren't something that you want to skip over or ignore.
Well, you touched on where I was going to go with that next, which is are there any privacy concerns? I mean, do we have to be worried about when we're implementing this technology? Are we needing to get opt-ins and things like that? And if so, how can planners deal with that in a way that doesn't spoil the fun? We want to be able to make it fun and experiential, crazy business, but that's kind of grinds to a halt if you have to stop and sign something.
Right, yeah, and so for us, because most people want that video, when you enter your email, that's where you agree to some terms and conditions, and we're COPPA compliant as well, especially if you have kids wanting to do this, which of course they do, because it's a hologram. So that's a very simple, easy way to do that, and we follow kind of all of those laws regarding data, making sure it's aggregate, anonymous, etc. So it's kind of all of those rules that have already been created for collecting data, whether that's Internet of Things or websites. Same thing applies here.
All right, well, I think that's going to wrap it up. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us a little bit more about what you guys do, or anything you've got on the horizon that you're excited to announce?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say the holograms and data do go together. I mean, that's often a thing that people don't think about, but that's really what can make it really valuable for your event. And I'd say you're going to see us at a lot more trade shows this year, and hopefully there's a hologram selfie at your next event. So always feel free to reach out, and if anyone's ever in LA, we love to give demos to people. So
well, that's what I was just going to say. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us, but where can people find out more about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so info@Ventana, and if you go to our site, you can also sign up for our newsletter, which will tell you about all of the latest holograms. We're based in LA, but we do work everywhere. We're in New York, Chicago, Texas, all the time. So if you follow us on Twitter or Facebook, you'll definitely hear about the next hologram near you.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. Really cool stuff. I was very excited to see that we had you on the docket to join us because, like I said, I think in the pre-show interview, I've had my eye on you guys for a while, and it's been fun. So really, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you all will join us next time for another episode of Event Icons.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of Hashtag Event Icons.
Don't be afraid to dance.
For the transcription and all the resources mentioned, head to www.helloendless.com/blog. This week's episode will be posted and available by next Tuesday. Also, let us know what you thought about this week's episode. Share your biggest takeaway and join the Twitter conversation sponsored by Alex Plaxton and Little Bird Told Media. Just tag your post with hashtag Event Icons. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on hashtag Event Icons.